name's James Trantham, and this is my project video on the Battle of Cowpens. The Battle of Cowpens took place near Chesney, South Carolina. It is a national battlefield. On the board behind me is a map of the area. As you can see, this is the battlefield itself. The whole park is this whole area. Some years after the war, Robert Scruggs settled the area. He built his house right here. In 1849, famous engraver and author Benson Lossing stopped at this house in South Carolina near present-day Chesney to ask for directions to the site of the Battle of Cowpens. This house had been built in 1828, just 47 years after the battle. During this time period, after it was built, many visitors would stop by here asking for directions. The owner, Robert Scruggs, had moved down here and built the house in 1828 and was known to show people the battlefield itself. This is just an example of the period housing. The National Park Service has kept it to its original state and restored it. So it'd be an example of housing during that time period. Later, when the Park Service came into being and started making national parks, his house and land was included within the park. Now, on the battlefield itself, the British formed up on this side here. According to this map, I should be around this area here, actually well ahead of the British forces. This is the Green River Road. British forces will have been down through this area here, advancing. If you go about this way, it's been about half a mile, maybe even less. You will have seen American Continentals and militia coming up to face the British. No wonder the British thought they had an easy, open area. Daniel Morgan and his troops filled up on this side, on the north side of the road. Continentals and the militia would have been lined up through here, this area, facing that way. The British base camp would have been back this way toward the visitor center. Peaceful area. The road to victory for our U.S. independence started here. The British were defeated here, and their losses affect them in the upcoming battles that led up to Yorktown. Lord Cornwallis had to surrender. As British troops led by Lieutenant Colonel Charles Toddington started moving down, he met first militia troops, American militia troops, on the road.
Got these shoulders fire up. Right about face. We go forward 3 steps, forward march. Prime and load. see, we done a little priming, pour it down, and go up. All right. Pose, fire lock. Make ready. Take aim. Fire. Pose. Pose, fire lock. Make ready. Take aim. Fire. Pose. Pose, fire lock. Make ready. Take aim. Fire. Shoulder fire. Cure. Shoulder, about face, pick up your belt.
And after a short volley, they started retreating backwards. His troops are following and had cavalry come in. Daniel Morgan had the militia fall back to a certain area where they had to turn and fire back at the British advancing. They did this along with the Continentals. So as they came about to around this point here, the militia turned. They had met the Continental Army. They returned and met the British forces head on, and Lieutenant Colonel Washington, who was a distant cousin of George Washington, led his cavalry around from this side to attack the British's right flank. The militia had actually, when they were, as a first an organized retreat, and it turned this way counterclockwise to come around for their attack. The British forces went from an organized force within seconds into a disorganized mob retreating back. As the Americans pushed the British forces back, the British retreated. Tarleton himself managed to get away. His force was effectively eliminated. The American troops had taken, in some reported cases, up to 700 troops of the British were either wounded, captured, or dead. Considering Tarleton started off with around 1,150 troops, and he had met around 1,000 American forces, 1,000 American troops total. This was considered a rout. The British lost this battle, and this whole battle took less than an hour to complete. It was a very short battle, very decisive battle, because from Cowpens, Cornwallis moved up to Kings Mountain, North Carolina, but he did not have Tarleton's legion, his forces, to actually go in front of him to help him all. Tarleton's legion, as it was called, was half cavalry and half infantry. They were American loyalists for the most part, not many British regulars in it. And losing his force to the Americans, one, created a American morale booster that, and helped the Americans, militia and Continentals, and the Continental Army to come together, to believe in themselves. It also deprived Cornwallis of an effective force who had been helping him through South Carolina moving through. Tarleton his forces were brutal to the Americans, and during the battle when originally some soldiers when they're coming upon British were calling out Tarleton's Quarter, but the American leaders stopped it, said we will give them mercy, we will give them a quarter. And when the British soldiers surrendered, there were no killings, no wounding of soldiers during this time.